Hello, and trigger warning for the following: child abuse and ableism. And there might be some other trigger warnings throughout the video, but those are the main ones. If those are topics that upset you and make you feel uncomfortable or trigger uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, memories, what have you, you might want to sit this video out today. So if you've been on my channel for any amount of time, you will know that I don't usually do a whole lot of pre-recorded content. Most of my videos and especially my responses tend to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Live streams. I tend to do live stream reactions. I think the only exception is the video that, came out on, April 5th. And that was because, I don't know why, but I kind of felt like, I guess because the YouTuber in that video is someone I kind of know, personally somewhat, like we were friends/acquaintances a few years ago, that I wanted to take a little bit extra effort to prevent people from going after them, especially because I feel like they're just parroting points, because, they're not, like a lot of the other people on the channel, they aren't someone who generally tends to, make their content, about trans things. But also, with that aside, a few weeks ago, I tried to do a stream where I responded or gave my opinions on the Essence of Thought Rachel Oates situation. And looking back at that stream, that was a disaster and a half. And I feel like if I want to do commentary on more complicated subjects that involve covering multiple videos, multiple sources, multiple whatever, that those things are probably better done pre-recorded. And after editing that one, pre-recorded video about the transphobic comments there, I think I shall keep most of my singular video reactions to streams, because that's a lot less editing on my end, and keep the more nuanced, complicated, multi-source topics to pre-recorded videos from now on. So yeah, that is why this is a thing. So yeah, let's get into the actual meat and potatoes of the thing. So basically, the rest of this video is essentially going to be me reacting to the multiple different sources I could find of information on the situation and talking about each and every one of them. Because honestly, I was not expecting the situation to be as complicated as it was. I saw this because for some reason YouTube has been recommending me a lot of commentary YouTubers that I've never watched before, which is a good thing, but is also sometimes kind of like, whenever you watch a new creator, you kind of have to like suss them out of like, okay, what are their opinions on things, what are their biases, do they hold any views that I might not be comfortable with, i.e. like transphobia, things like that. But anyway, so like, there was a few creators covering the situation, and a lot of them, not all of them of course, but a lot of them seemed to be like they'd have like the fact that the people in this situation are trans in their titles, rather than like, the names of the people. They'd have like, oh, transgender parents. It seemed like they were kind of capitalizing on the fact that trans parents are behaving horribly, rather than focusing on the fact that, like, I don't know, you don't see when cisgender parents are accused of abuse, you don't see headlines like cisgender parent behaves horribly. For some reason, a lot of people covering the situation felt that trans needed to be in the title. So that was a little bit of like a red flag in my brain, and so I decided to watch the actual response video by the creators in question, and they had made a point in their video that they felt that people were just going after them because they're trans and kind of holding them to like a higher standard or whatever, and I believed that. and I believed that people were just taking essentially family beef out of context until I saw Luxander's video on the topic, and then looked on Twitter for myself. And so this video is me learning a lesson to always look at all the evidence for yourself, especially when things aren't as clear-cut as they might appear to be, because unfortunately people can and are sometimes very manipulative, and they make shit up. So I feel like it probably would be a good idea to go over the response video that Zina and Poppy posted, because one, it is the first thing I watched, and two, it is the this way we're not poisoning the well, I guess, as it were, because in this video they made claims that their child was abusive in response to their child making claims that they were actually abusive, and the evidence seems to not be in their favor. Let's put it that way. I guess I am kind of poisoning the well with this bit, but that's okay. So, kind of one of the main points in the video that stuck out to me, and I kind of thought was an orange flag at the time, but, didn't really realize it was like a red flag until seeing the documents, was their whole assertion that they just wanted to help and their child, didn't want the help. This seemed like a orange flag to me, because in my brain I'm thinking, a lot of the things they're saying do seem like they genuinely want to help, but also at the same time, a lot of the things that they were saying and talking about and doing seemed to not be helpful. But this is a common thing that as a disabled person you experience, where people try to help you, but their help, even if they mean well, isn't always positive. And so their claim as well that they just wanted to help and people were just taking their child's misunderstanding of their help out of context and using it against them. I mean, the video is literally called weaponizing, and then they put their child's preferred name. I'm not going to use their preferred name here because I don't think that the child in the documents, as you'll see, they use the name Spawn, not their preferred name. So we're not going to use their preferred name in this video. But they do kind of spin this narrative of we just wanted to help our ADHD child. A lot of the things they were doing, in my opinion, aren't helpful for people with ADHD. I can't speak on the autism part as I don't have that, but I can say at least on the ADHD part, a lot of the stuff they were doing would be more harmful than helpful in a lot of ways, because also they seem to mix up the concept of weaponized incompetence and ADHD, and that is something that absolutely drives me up the wall, because something that people tend to say a lot to people who have ADHD is that they're lazy or they're unfocused on purpose, and 9 times out of 10 that is not the case. Sure, I'm sure there are sometimes people who purposefully don't manage their ADHD, but 9 times out of 10, if someone with ADHD is taking longer to do a task, they're not doing it to be annoying or as a weaponized incompetence manipulation tactic. They're doing it that way because it literally just takes them longer to do that task because of how their brain works. They complain about their child needing to listen to music while they do chores and complaining that it takes them longer to do chores because the music, or that their child would get distracted either talking to people or doing chores. And I can say this as someone with ADHD, that is a common experience for people with ADHD, and obviously one that should be, I guess, worked on in some ways, especially if it's significant enough, if you're getting distracted enough to where you can't complete tasks, and so you just don't. That's something I'm personally working on in therapy, is getting my brain to be able to actually complete chores and shit, so I can actually get things done, because I can't get stuff done on a regular basis, so I just don't bother at this point. But so they're just basically stating that they're kind of, it's weird because they're also disabled. Like Zina and Poppy are both disabled, and so they're essentially saying and talking at the same, while saying in the same breath that their disabilities need accommodating. They seem to be really frustrated and angry that they need to accommodate their child's disabilities, and then they claim that when they put an accommodation in place, their child didn't like it. And it's like, they also would kind of contradict themselves and say, well, their child agreed to it. So then which is it? Did they agree to it, or did they dislike it? Like, which one was it? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that is my first kind of bullet point here. So the orange flag number 2, I guess we'll say, that I noticed was they seemed to be very what's what I'm looking for? They kind of made some points that were like irrelevant, like saying you don't know what it's like to be a parent, or most of you who are watching this aren't parents. That's irrelevant to people critiquing your parenting. You don't have to have a child to know what it's like to be a child, to know what it's like to be on the other end of that situation. I think a lot of times parents aren't the best critiques of other parents because ultimately you're both on the same side of that situation, where people who aren't parents might have a better perspective on what it's like to be on the receiving end of parenting rather than those that are. But either way, whether someone's a parent or not, that's kind of irrelevant. Obviously that part about people who aren't parents sometimes being better critiques on parenting and relationship dynamics is just my opinion. It's not, fact. But I do think that people should be able to critique other people's parenting, especially if it's publicly, especially if they're public figures and they've, publicly been promoting themselves as a safe space for people under 18. And I think that another kind of irrelevant point they made was, well, actually, it's more a contradictory point, is they would say in the video that their child refused to get a job, but then they also said that their child was sending out resumes. And let me freaking tell you, as someone who is looking for a job and doing all that, it takes a lot of work. And you are encouraged to search for jobs that you both are and are not qualified for. Because if you don't, then you'll never get into the field that you want to get into, because you don't start out qualified for a tech job or whatever. You don't start out qualified for, whatever, like you have to put your foot in the door. And then there's also the, contradictory point of they wouldn't do chores, but then also they said they wouldn't do them fast enough. So which is it? Were they not doing the chores? Or were they just not doing them at the pace you would have liked? And there was one more contradictory or, irrelevant point that they made, and I'm trying to remember what it was. When I remember it, I will put it in here. So I remembered the other point that I wanted to make, and it is essentially that they made this whole big deal out of people calling their adult child just a child, or a kid, and that is super relevant because throughout the video they use they them pronouns for them, and the gender neutral terms for a child, for someone's child, you have son and daughter, which are gendered terms which don't denote age, and then you have child, which a lot of people obviously associate with a young kid, but can also be used for an adult kid as well. So in fact, a lot of older people in their like 60s and 70s and stuff still call people like in their 20s kids. So yeah, a kid in their 20s can still be called a kid or a child. I think they kind of used this as like a see, you guys just don't understand kind of point, which is not really relevant at all and does not help their case. Another like orange flag that I noticed that now is very obviously a glaring red flag, knowing that Luxander points out that they have like a Discord community, and also knowing that like they know how Discord works. Their thing about vent channels always being for lying seems way more sus now. It also seems a bit more sus because they both I think Poppy in particular, if I'm remembering correctly, would they would vent a lot on Twitter. So are their Twitter vents lying then? I mean, if their whole thing is social media vent channels are for lying, then does that mean they were lying on their Twitter? Like, So I guess in conclusion, my final thoughts on their video is that a lot of their points seemed really believable at first, if you don't have any other context, which is interesting because they say in their video that they didn't have that we didn't have context as the viewers, we weren't there, all that kind of thing. And while that's true, when given further context, it is interesting how quickly their arguments fall apart, in my opinion. Luxander's video came out a few days after the after the Zina and Poppy response video. So up until that point, the only things I had seen was the Zina and Poppy response video, and people reacting to it and focusing way too much on the transgender parent part of it in most of their streams. There was a couple of streams I saw bits of that didn't do that, but I had to check out of it because they kept using the word delusional, and I just, using that word out of its context annoys the hell out of me, and I just can't sit through videos where people do that every 5 seconds. I can't. But Luxander's video is very informative because they're coming at this from a standpoint of, I guess, being like an friend or acquaintance of Zina and Poppy's. They're also coming at it from the point of being trans themselves, and also themselves having mental health issues, specifically BPD. And their points are very interesting because Poppy also has BPD, and so it was interesting to hear Luxander's point of view on how Poppy seems to kind of not manage her mental health, which is a bit hypocritical when you consider the fact that one of her main complaints was that her child was not managing their mental health. So it's a bit hypocritical to expect someone else to manage their mental health, but then you yourself not manage yours. And also, I will say before this that there was docs out with the evidence, but I kept seeing in the comments section of Zina and Poppy's video that these documents were very hard to read, and so that put me off looking at them at first. But then I decided to take a stab at it. Most of the stuff in the docs my screen reader could read, which is good because it was very tiny print, at least tiny for me. And then the screenshots my screen reader couldn't read, most of them I could make out what was said pretty easily. So I will say that, obviously if you're someone who has a hard time with blurred print, reading that, then you are probably going to find a lot of them hard to read because a lot of them are a bit blurry. For me, my eyesight issues aren't overly affected by the blurriness of the print, partially because I did have cataract in my left eye that made it blurry, and I also had keratoconus in my right eye that made that things blurry in that eye for a bit, so I'm used to looking at blurred text. But I will say that most people probably won't have a hard time reading the docs, and I'll talk about them a bit more later, but I think that they're genuinely worth a read if you to like get both sides of what's going on. Also, interesting tangent thing is that in their response, they kind of belittle anyone who sees the docs and sees truth in what's going on, which that's a red flag and a half. Also, the fact that they threaten their child with legal action actually is what led me to put a dislike on the video. But I did leave comments as I was watching, and literally in the first 8 minutes I did leave a comment on this was with my other YouTube channel. I would leave comments like, it was something like that they had massive autism mom vibes. And by that I mean, like, they're the type of parent who cares more about their kid being quote-unquote functioning than they do about, like, anything else related to their child's disability. Because there's a lot of quote-unquote, like, not quote-unquote, but a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of discourse around, like, how some moms of autistic children focus more on their autistic child being normal than they do on their autistic child being, like, safe and healthy. So they focus more on taking the normal route to their child being part of society than they do what might be, like, best for them. I don't know how to, like, describe it. It's kind of discourse that's it's hard to describe. But, and I will say that as someone with ADHD, sometimes you get treated that way as well. But anyway, back on topic. I will say Luxander's video is mainly focused on establishing, like, a pattern of behavior of poppies in how they treat their partners, how they treat their partners, and how a lot of this was very public. A lot of it was on Twitter, a lot of it was on Tumblr, a lot of it was very, very right there, very obvious. And even though most of that stuff, so Luxander uses, its pronouns. I accidentally used, like, he, him pronouns for its, and that's not great. So that's why that clip ended very abruptly, is because I said he instead of its. So it's made, a point of establishing kind of a pattern of behavior of Poppy mistreating people in a very public way, which, even though it is not directly related to the stuff with their child, does kind of establish that, okay, if they were doing all of this stuff publicly, is it really that hard to believe that they were doing this to another person behind closed doors as well? Is that really that hard to believe? And there's also kind of the fact that, it's touches on the stuff with the child abuse accusations at the end. So I guess I would say the main thing that Luxander's video kind of hits home about kind of poking holes in Zina and Poppy's response video is it establishes a pattern of behavior of Poppy not exactly managing her mental health. I don't know about Zina. I don't remember Zina being touched on that much as far as her mental health is concerned. And also this is Poppy's kid mainly, so Poppy not managing her mental health. Also, I will say that I brought up the documents a little bit earlier, that are, like, the main evidence, and Luxander was reading directly from them. So, it wasn't like they were just pulling their accusations out of nothing. My video is mostly just summarizing the stuff that I found and going, this is interesting, because this is not what I expected at all. I wasn't even planning on covering this situation because I just didn't think it needed response. I just thought it was people taking family drama out of context, and now, after looking at all this shit, it is very obviously not taking family drama out of context. It's a lot worse than that. So, yeah. It also pokes holes in their claim that, their child's not managing their mental health. And because, like, it kind of establishes the double standard of Poppy expecting people in their romantic relationships to manage both Poppy's mental health and theirs. And then when you look at the text messages in the documents that relate specifically to the what's the word I'm looking for? The child who uses the name Spawn in their call out document, their evidence document. So yeah, in Spawn's stuff, it's corroborated. So I find it interesting that even though Luxander's video was mainly hinged on focusing on Poppy's just pattern of behavior and how she treats people in general, not just focusing on the child abuse claims, that it still very much pokes holes in their response video, which, if I remember correctly, Luxander said it didn't watch the what's what I'm looking for, their response video. And I don't blame them, because it was a waste of my time. It was an hour-long video. I could have spent that hour doing literally anything else. So, yeah, I spent an hour being manipulated and fed a bunch of bullshit. Luxander talks about their experiences with BPD, and then talks about how it's very manageable. There's treatment for it and things like that. And Poppy on their Twitter talks a lot about how unmanageable BPD is and how others just are gonna have to deal with her. And well, I do think there is a problem in overall mental health stuff of people wanting people with mental health issues to just act like they don't have any mental health issues. There is a line between that and what Poppy does, which is just expects others to manage their mental health, which is not good. But then she also has the expectation that her partners, and if you look in the docs, their child manages their mental health. The main point of their response video was their child wasn't managing their ADHD, so they had to do it. But they'll also simultaneously, there was evidence in the doc that Alexander was looking at that Poppy thinks that it is up to others to manage her mental health. So there's this double standard of what she expects of her child and what she does. And obviously that kind of tends to lead more on the side of those claims being correct, the claims of Spawn being correct. I also find it weird that they kinda, in the response video, seem to claim that Spawn actually abused them, and they had this very specific definition of financial abuse in that video, and saying that because they're quote-unquote helping their child manage their money was not financial abuse, that somehow discredits all their claims. Like, I will say that even if, I don't know, one of Spawn's claims turns out not to be true, which at this point I have a hard time believing, in my opinion, that doesn't negate the fact that, like, telling you, expecting your adult child to ask you before they spend their money is a bit ridiculous, even if they do have money management problems. By the time you're an adult, it's kind of up to you how you manage your money, and obviously you might want to help someone, but like, I feel like they kind of use the whole they kind of use the whole Spawn has a disability, so we should be allowed to treat them like a baby or a child or whatever. And that's not how that works. That is just not how that works. So yeah, they do that. And they kinda, I don't know, they seem to be doing a lot of manipulating for people who claim to be the ones who are being manipulated by their child. Another thing is that Poppy Alexander both brings this up in his video, and then also in the response video, Poppy brings up that she's a therapist and talks about how she didn't know that her son was autistic, even though, like, she's a therapist, and that's totally understandable. I think if you are a therapist, you should not be trying to diagnose your friends and family members. It's actually, like, unethical to do that. And according to Alexander's video, Poppy allegedly lost her website because she blackmailed someone, which is interesting because at the end of her video, she essentially blackmails her child by threatening legal action if they don't take down their document. So essentially kind of being like, well, I'm allowed to tell my side of the story, but you're not allowed to tell yours. Which I would say, even if the other person isn't being accurate, they should at least, their evidence should be out there, and your evidence should be out there. We shouldn't be just saying, well, this person's evidence shouldn't be out. Like, we should have the evidence that their evidence is false evidence, you know what I mean? So, you know, having no evidence, we have no way to know if it's false evidence or not, but if we have the evidence that it's false evidence, that's better than not having the evidence out at all. They just don't want it out because it makes them look bad. But in her video, I find it interesting that Poppy claims that she lost her website because of transphobes, and she also blames her child's behavior on, I guess, transphobic people, like weaponizing them or whatever. And Alexander provides evidence that that is not the case, that Poppy lost her website because she blackmailed someone. And then she decides in her response video to blackmail her kid. That's kind of yikes. Like, she clearly didn't learn her lesson. So, yeah. Then this situation just keeps getting worse. So, in Zina and Poppy's own, like, video, there's two things that they do that kind of corroborate the document that Alexander was kind of commenting on, and their own experiences with them. And that is, in the video, and they literally admit to manipulating their kid by turning off the internet and by having these schedules and stuff, and their kid paying rent. And look, their kid paying rent isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the double standard that think was brought up in Luxander's video was that, like, Zina didn't have a job, allegedly, and, what's the word I'm looking for? Or maybe that was a claim made on Twitter. I'm trying to remember the source of that claim, if that was something from Twitter or if that was in Luxander's video. But, allegedly, Zina didn't have a job, and so she wasn't paying rent. But, and also that, they had to, referring to, Spawn, had to do a lot of chores and things, which, Poppy and Zina in their video made it sound like they, weren't doing their chores, and so then they had to make these schedules and stuff, and that then their kid would agree to it, which, no offense, but he kind of doesn't have a choice, because you could just kick him out if he doesn't agree, despite the fact that he's, they are paying rent. So, yeah, it is, I don't know, it's just, the whole thing's messed up, and, Luxander kind of briefly touches on it at the end about how, like, it's very obvious from the screenshots posted in the document, and the information, that there's this kind of double standard, and kind of a lot of goalpost moving of no matter what you do, you're always doing something wrong, and shit like that, and how absolutely fucked it is. Honestly, watching Luxander's video made me want to go read the document for myself. That's what kind of made me want to go look at it, because it was like, wait, this is completely different than how they're framing the evidence in their video, which is insane, because they're making it sound like, oh, it was just a little family drama, and people are using it for their own gain and whatever, when that's not the case. There's, like, actual abuse allegations. Like, this is fucked up. This just keeps getting more fucked up and more fucked up. So, I just realized that in my last recording bit, I did not explain how the things I was talking about from the Zina and Poppy video tied into the Luxander video, and this section's about the Luxander video and how it pokes holes in theirs. So, the Luxander video, it was going through the document, and pointing out that there was a lot of times where Zina and Poppy are publicly very verbally aggressive and verbally abusive to people on Twitter, especially their partners for whatever reason, specifically Poppy in that case. And so it just kind of corroborates the behavior that I saw in their response video, that I don't know, like, Luxander's video, so Luxander said that it never watched the response video, like I had said earlier. So it hasn't seen it, but as someone who's seen both the Luxander video and the response video, it just, it adds a whole new light, it adds a whole new layer, of what the fuck to their response, because their response definitely downplays the severity of what they're being accused of and stuff like that, and it's just really not great. So yeah, I'm glad I've looked at both bits of evidence here. A good point that Luxander made about that they brought up when they went through the documents was there was a lot of ace phobia, which if Zina and Poppy want to position themselves as LGBTQ friendly content creators, ace phobia, there's no place for that. I would also argue that if they want to consider themselves mental health positive, especially like plural positive creators, which according to Luxander's video, they want to position themselves as. Being anti-Therian, which they did in multiple times where they talked about creators. There was multiple people, like, on Twitter, that they, when they talked to them, would say that, oh, they're not a dog, they're a human, invalidating their identity as a dog. And I will say this right now. Alexander made this point, but I'm going to second that point, that anti-alien shit uses the same transphobic talking points. It's also, in my opinion, extremely ableist, because there's a lot of people who identify as other animals because of their, like, neurodiversity, so they kind of identify with their, like, neurodiverse traits with, other animals. It's not like they are, at least most aliens that I know, and most other kin that I know, aren't claiming to not be human in the physical sense. They're claiming to not be human in, like, the identity mental sense. And to go back to the point about their community being safe for plurals, you can't be anti-alien and be you can't be anti-alien and pro-plurality, because it is common for systems to have non-human alters. So you can't be like, I'm supportive of plurality, and also not pro people identifying as non-human. That's a bit of a side tangent, because, I mean, most of this video is me, showing the, I guess, talking about, going through kind of the timeline of the discovering of information that I found, and the claims that I made that kind of related to the ableist child abuse, bullshit, that, kind of made the orange flags turn into red flags. At least that's kind of the main through line of this video. But I just kind of wanted to go on that side tangent for a bit, because I thought that was kind of important and also kind of interesting. So yeah, those are my hot takes. I guess we'll get back to the rest of the regular part of the video. So I guess in conclusion on this section, we have plenty of evidence that they as in Zina and Poppy, are totally bullshitting here in their response video, and that I almost fell for it, honestly. So, I hate to break it to you, but it gets worse. And it kind of explains some of the contradictions once you look at the actual documents. What actually, some of the, where some of their contradictions come from, and some of their, like, weird claims and stuff. So, looking at the docs, it is very clear why Zina and Poppy wanted to say that vent channels are for lying. It's not just because they want to talk like stereotypical boomers. It's because most of the worst allegations are said by Spawn in their vent channel thing in their private server with their friends. And they try to claim that their friends convinced them that their parents are abusive. I find it weird that any opinion that opposes Zina and Poppy's opinions is someone manipulating or convincing or what have you, that it can't just be other people have different opinions, which is interesting due to a thing I found later that I haven't really seen people talk about, but also it's not like a big deal in terms of the entirety of this, and that is what's what I'm looking for. That is the fact that most of what was alleged to have taken place was put in the vent channel. It's also interesting that they never refute any specific claims. Like, they kind of do. They refute the one that, like, he didn't have food they didn't have food access, or and a couple other things. They did refute those, but they didn't show any evidence. They just said, no, we didn't do it. They said, we could show evidence. We could, but they didn't. They didn't show evidence. And the person who posted the docs on Twitter, I don't know if I'm not certain if Milena is the one who compiled the docs, or how much of the docs are Spawn compiling the docs, or I'm not entirely clear on that, honestly, like who contributed to what, and and who else helped with the docs, so I don't want to like say definitively who did and spread misinformation around. But so Zina and Poppy said in their video that they were going to in the future show evidence, like concrete evidence, but they didn't. Also, find it interesting in the comment section of their video, they essentially assert that all the evidence is fake and stuff. And then when people were asking about, well, how do we hear the other person's side of this, they wouldn't respond. Or they got really defensive when one person said, why are you using your child's preferred name in your video title and in your video? And they got really defensive, and the first part of the comment was, why do you care? Now, I'm not someone who's going to tone police someone, but I don't care what tone you say why do you care in. When someone's giving you criticism or feedback and your first response is, why do you care? That's kind of a red flag, honestly. And I think the fact that all of this stuff was only on Twitter did kind of allow people to, people like me who weren't privy to what was going on in the situation, who just kind of stumbled across it because they saw people talking about it, to fall for the, I guess to be charitable, misconception that things weren't that bad and all this, and so thankfully with all of this stuff coming out now, we all know that that is not the case. And I would encourage you to go to Milena's Twitter and look at the documents for yourself, read them through. There's a lot of different things, a lot of different allegations involving a lot of different people. The one I read through completely was the one specifically with all the allegations against Zina and Poppy in regards to their child, but there are some other ones with some allegations in terms of like exes and community members and things like that. So yeah. The last thing I want to talk about really quickly is a video by a creator named Simply Jacqueline. It was posted over a year ago. It's about 12 minutes long, and the video is mentioned that Poppy in particular isn't very nice to Jacqueline, and calls them useless. It's even in the title that Poppy calls Jacqueline useless, and that kind of makes Jacqueline feel used and manipulated and things like that, and I can kind of, I guess, relate to that in a tiny way. Like I said, some people might feel like maybe I'm inserting myself into a situation I'm not a part of, and I don't know, maybe I am. I came across this rabbit hole, fell down this rabbit hole, and I'm like, oh my fucking god, I cannot believe that this is what this situation is. But in Jacqueline's video, Jacqueline mentions that Poppy, called her useless, and that Jacqueline had contributed a lot to Poppy's community, and so to be called useless was extremely hurtful. There was a lot of people, not a lot, I don't know, there were people on Twitter under Milena's post where all of the docs are. There are people also posting their personal experiences being part of Poppy's community, and so I would recommend checking out Milena's Twitter. All of the sources for this video will be linked in the description. And yeah, time to end the video, I guess. This video is supposed to be a TLDR of what's going on, since a lot of the videos are really long, including that stupid response video by Zina and Poppy. It was an hour long. That's an hour of my life I will never get back. And this TLDR went a lot longer than I expected. It's almost an hour long. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you made it to the end, thank you so much, and have a lovely day.